So, welcome to the Keen on Yoga podcast. Nice to have you here again. Today it's just me, a solo episode. Next week we'll be back with a guest again. You know the drill by now. So, anything else I need to say before starting? Not really. Lots going on, but you can look at the website for that. You don't need me to tell you what's going on. Online course. Did you ever fancy doing an Ashtanga online intensive? Well, it is possible, believe it or not. It does work quite well because you don't have to even be in the same time zone or even make the recordings live. Although, it's nice. There are some live recordings, but you don't have to make them live. You can watch the whole thing and do the whole thing on repeat, on record, and then just fling things over to me in email and social media, ask me questions, etc. If you can't make it, but if you can make it live, then that's great too. You don't have to do it all on record, and I'd love to see you. This is our third one, and it seems to have gone down really well with the last two intakes of people that have done this course with me. I would say I'm not really ever keen on saying students really, because we're doing it together. It's something that every time we're joining, we're kind of doing something together. I'm learning, obviously, not from scratch, but I'm also learning too. I'm in relationship with the whole process really. So I'm kind of reluctant about the mantle of teacher-student really. Anyway, that kind of brings us nicely to the podcast today, which is things I've changed my mind on. Things I've changed my mind on over the years of teaching, and it's been 25 years now of teaching, believe it or not. I'm not really proud of that. It's just kind of something I fell into really after the age of, I think it was about 21. I started practicing yoga, hatha yoga, for a couple of years since 19. And, I would say rather religiously, for want of a better word. I mean, not with a religious perspective necessarily, but I really needed it. As I've said in other episodes, I had suffered from anxiety and intermittent depression, obviously, due to that anxiety. And that had happened really since I was about 11 years old, to be honest. So when I found yoga at 18, 19, I'd been looking for something, and I'd enrolled in philosophy at university to, just try and sort out these kind of questions that were kind of on my mind, existential questions about life, the point of life, the meaning of life. All those things are really problematized or kind of brought up into the open when you do suffer with difficulties in life. You do start to question, what's the point, what's the meaning? And so that's what really drove me to philosophy, and it didn't really help when I got into the philosophy class. Sorry, when I got into the psychotherapist room and in the student union department, I suppose you could call it that, she said, well, you and half the philosophy group is in here. So, I mean, not literally at the same time, but basically, it hadn't really helped just trying to think your way through these existential questions. And I knew I needed something in the body. I happened to be there happened to be this yoga class in this student union, and it happened once a week. It was kind of just hatha yoga, just gentle sedentary postures, really. Nothing too. I mean, definitely not anything near as dynamic as Ashtanga yoga. Nothing near. But I found it difficult. I also, from the very first moment, found it like an absolute panacea. I knew it was the thing. I knew it was the thing that would help. Everything hadn't really helped. Everything else, even medications, I'd taken antidepressants and tranquilizers when I was younger, didn't really work. I mean, put a lid on it, but certainly didn't solve the issues, right? But yoga did, and I did it every day since that point. Every day. But it wasn't until a couple of years later I found Ashtanga, and I suppose, to be honest, I mean, kind of put my hand up and said probably a year after starting Ashtanga, but it's around 21 when I started Ashtanga yoga. I started teaching. At that time, I didn't do it on purpose, really. I was living I was traveling and working as a cook. I'd finished university by that time, and I thought, well, what can I do that isn't academic? It's nothing to do with getting on the ladder to a career job. I didn't want that. Maybe I should have, looking back, but I didn't want that at the time. I thought, what can I do that's kind of interesting and interested me? And getting into yoga as well, I was naturally interested more in healthy eating, as you are when you feel healthier in the body. And so I started to learn how to cook. I hadn't learned how to cook previous to that, really. At home, I didn't really do any cooking. And to be quite honest, I had no understanding of how to cook anything at all, really. Like rice even, really nothing. So, when I started yoga and I started feeling a bit better, I thought, I want to cook things for myself and eat well. That just kind of naturally arose. And so I started kind of looking at recipe books and stuff. And that really, once you can, start to cook things and eat them and think, wow, that tastes okay. It's just I was so amazed that I could cook and eat things that tasted okay, and even cook for my friends. I started cooking for everyone and reading all these recipe books. I was so intrigued by it that I supplemented. I mean, I had a student loan at the time. have any income, right? So I supplemented my student loan with working in kitchens, just washing up and doing extra chopping stuff that I could get my hands on if I could do any extra stuff other than washing up, right? But gradually, this was in the Midlands in Leamington Spa. I didn't really mean to give a backstory, but we'll carry on with it now. And gradually, I started progressing up the ladder, let's say, to making, kind of like, let's say, chef de partie, like the second chefs, like your first chef is they're in command of the whole restaurant. And the chef de partie does a section, like maybe it's mains or desserts, or anyways. So I worked up not really desserts because that's a dessert chef, but a good let's say a good qualification in cooking. And I never actually was formally qualified, but I managed to do it. And so then what I did was I went around different places using my cooking to support myself. So I went to stay in Penzance for a while because John Scott was down there to practice and learn from him. So I enrolled in a restaurant. I got a job in a restaurant in Penzance and went to see John Scott regularly because that's the only way I could do it. I couldn't afford to go down there and up again on the train and take time off work. So similarly, I went to Crete a lot of times, where Derrick Island's regional centre with Rada Worrell was in southern Crete. He'd passed away a couple of years after I arrived, but I went to work as a cook there for several seasons. So I did that as well. I learnt from Pierre Seguier, who was now Rada's partner, and Rada herself. And that was amazing. I can't remember what I was going to say from there. Oh, yeah, sorry. So then what happened, but basically, as I came back to the UK, I started working in Buddhist centres because I'm very interested in Tibetan Buddhism, right? Which I still am. And so I worked in a couple of retreat centres. And then in the end, they asked me to open up this cafe that had been running in London. It was called Jamyang in Elephant and Castle area of London. So kind of like just south of the river, let's say. But it didn't open in the end, but I went to live there, and it was actually used as a courthouse for trying IRA prisoners. So it had little cells, and they'd done up these cells. So I lived in a cell literally for 5 or 6 months, and I did the cooking for the staff that worked there, right? The Buddhist lamas, the Tibetan Buddhist lamas, and other people that worked there. The plan was to open the cafe, but that never happened. But in the interim, because we had no shared space, my cell didn't have space to put a mat, right? I didn't have space to practice, but I would have done it privately otherwise. I'm kind of a private person, really. Anyway, it didn't. So I practiced outside in the communal area. And other staff members, there were young people that had also wanted to come and learn Buddhism in exchange for doing some kind of karma yoga, as it were. Anyway, they came and they saw in the morning, early morning, 6 or 7. I was putting my mat out before work, before doing the cooking, going into the kitchen. And they said, can we learn from you, right? So I started a half an hour earlier and finished a half an hour earlier. Just gradually taught them a little bit of Ashtanga, literally just taking them through the sequence, right? That was how we taught that. But I suppose to start off this thing of the things I've changed, that's the way that we taught back then was really practicing almost. Most people, and probably not all, probably not people like John Scott, but practicing with the person or with the class, right? We'd go through the practice literally with the class and do the sequence. That was it. Just show them the sequence. And if they couldn't do it, try and put them in the postures. And that was almost the sum total of teaching, really. There wasn't any emphasis on technique or looking at individuals and suiting the postures to the individuals, anything like that, what I teach now, right? It was literally, you just practice along with the person, try and inspire them, try and keep them going. And if they can't do a posture, try and manhandle them, basically, like push them into the shape. So that's the first thing I've changed. I don't do that anymore. I don't practice with the people anymore. Although I used to do a Sunday class online where I practiced along and guided the class practicing together. I thought that was kind of nice, but I don't do that anymore. And I don't adjust anymore. I don't manhandle people and push people into postures they can't do. We'll come to that in a second. Anyway, that's how I started, age 21, and I'm aged 45 now, so it's almost coming up to 25 years, which is crazy to reflect on. And so obviously a lot of things have changed. I think the first thing I can say is, look, knowledge is meant to change you. Having different experiences should change us. And if you don't keep changing, in a sense, if you don't keep evolving, then you're not really learning in truth. You might learn information, because if you learn information, right, in this sense, it would just be things that resonated with your current perspective. And we can easily do this, right? We like things, we agree things, we like things on social media, and we, et cetera, that we agree with, right? That make sense to us, right? Basically, that fit in generally to our current information. And we don't like things, and often we send people unpleasant messages, me included. No, I don't send them. I sometimes receive them. The things that don't resonate with, we don't understand, that we don't currently agree with, right? So in this sense, like, it's hard to learn because we just kind of subsume information that we already like, that we already agree with, and we take that as somehow learning. But obviously it's not learning, it's just to kind of keep on going around in the same circle. So real knowledge is to change one's opinion, isn't it? It will change one. It should change one. Yeah, it should make one think, at least. Sometimes, honestly, having different perspectives, you don't have to change your mind continuously to learn. Obviously, sometimes you kind of look at different perspectives and think, well, actually, I know myself. I know this information more clearly in contrast to that perspective, which I can see most clearly in it being presented to me that I don't agree with. Yeah. But nevertheless, I think that there's a constant evolution of us. And it might not be that, kind of changing 180 degrees in what you think, but certainly there's a sense of like, well, I don't know, deepening with your knowledge, right? You think something and then you think, well, it's not quite like that. I suppose knowledge becomes more and more nuanced. It becomes deeper, layered and textured as you go along. So it's not necessarily that you swing 180 degrees, although, and also it doesn't go in a linear process either. Like I think when I started yoga, in Hatha yoga, I really was approaching it from that perspective. Like I said, it cured my mental health struggles, right? In a couple of years, really, I came off the antidepressants. So, and I don't advise you just do that at all, obviously. And I did that with a doctor. I did that with acupuncture and homeopathy as well. But, I did it, but after that, you see, I kind of got wrapped up in the postures, right? So I started, I think, for quite deep reasons, albeit they weren't necessarily to know God. They were to be okay, to feel okay in the world, right? Like not to achieve any postures. It was much deeper than that. It was just to function, the kind of like on the deepest level, to be. So that's why I got into it. Yeah. And then, getting into Ashtanga, it became slightly easily, as we can kind of go down the rabbit hole, and especially when I started going to Mysore, and it became this kind of, everyone saying, oh, wow, you could practice so nicely and you can do all these things. And, because I was young and flexible. So I, as a young man, insecure, inevitably, I got wrapped up in this and the praise and the accomplishment perspective on that yoga. I kind of completely lost the yoga altogether for a number of years. I just got wrapped up in the dogma, the sequences, my abilities, the praise that I would get, for being able, and also my status as a teacher. I started teaching by then. I told you this fact that I started teaching, this kind of serendipity, this way that we say, by being asked to teach. And I taught the free at that time, and then the Buddhist centers asked me to run a class for general public. So I started running one class in the evenings, and this was at Elephant Castle in South London, if you know the area. And there's nothing around at that time. There's like 2000, nothing around, no yoga. Most people that came to the class never done yoga. Can you imagine that? They never even stepped. They didn't even know what yoga was, really. They know they wanted to try it, no idea. So it was amazing at that time, really, to teach people that hadn't done any. It's hard now to teach people with a little bit of context, right? Because people get stuck in with their ideas quite quickly. Naturally, they've been told by a teacher one thing, and then I tell them another thing, and so it's harder. But anyway, the classes at that time were a massive success because no one was teaching any yoga, really, in London, in that area. So yeah, they were full. Yeah, I did one night in the Buddhist Center, and then they said, "Well, do you want to do another evening?" Yeah. Then do you want to do a Saturday morning? So before long, I had 3 classes with them. And then I started running John Scott told me to run courses. Like at that time, he said, run a 10-week course. This was his idea for new teachers that he taught. He said, go and get people to enroll for 10 weeks and teach them from the beginning like that. That's how you should teach. That's his idea at the time. Of course, it's changed because people aren't beginners anymore, so you can't really enroll people for 10-week courses like that, right? I'm sure he doesn't say that anymore, but maybe he does. Maybe let me know. But anyway, so I started a couple of those in different locations. One was a place called the Market Coffee House in Spitalfields in the City of London. Another one was Waterloo. I can't remember the name of the street in Waterloo. There's a building there, a nice building actually. And I rented that space and did another 10-week course. Anyway, they were full as well. So I'd suddenly become a yoga teacher. I quit cooking, more or less. I wasn't doing much anyway, because it was a lot harder and less well paid, basically. And I enjoyed the yoga, I suppose. I did enjoy the yoga. I was also very frightened of my role as a teacher. As I said, I've always been ambivalent that I've really got anything to teach. And I was a new teacher as well. So I was very patently aware that there was most of the stuff I didn't know. And I also didn't really trust adjustments. I didn't really trust myself in adjustments, and that was the thing back then. You adjusted people into the postures, but I never really did that. Later on, I did it a bit. Well, I learned a bit about the body, but earlier on, I certainly didn't do that, and now I don't do it just because I didn't really think that. I wasn't sure that I wouldn't injure people, basically, which is true. Anyway, where was I? So that knowledge should change you. Maybe not even the general perspective. When you learn things, you might change your perspective on yoga altogether. And I did. I mean, I think first of all, I don't know what maybe you can't really put your finger on what yoga is ever, really. I mean, there's been moments when I thought it was about truth and God. There's been moments when I thought it was more practical, just about being a better self in the world. Yeah. There's been moments when it really is about just kind of almost a merging of consciousness into itself. Yeah. And there's been moments when it's literally nothing other than enjoying the body and, let's say, egoic, appreciating my ability. In contrast, when we do that, when we're pleased with what we can do, it's all, most of all, it's in contrast to what is the general level, right? Sometimes it's just like in and of itself, you're pleased with yourself because you just, that's a challenge and you did it yourself and you proved yourself that you could do it. But oftentimes that sense of accomplishment, if we're honest, is often to do with the fact that there's many people that can't accomplish the jump back or the kapata, all these things. And so we think, well, wow, we're rather special now. We can do these things and it makes you feel good. And, that's what competition is. That's what capitalism is based on. It's understandable. It doesn't make it right, but it's totally understandable the way that we operate, right? We know ourselves externally in contrast to one another. And when we do that, that's it. That's in. I'm kind of, I have a value, because I could do those things that other people can't. Basically, I know it's silly, but I think that's the one way we work. Anyway, keep on track. So, where are we? So yeah, you do change your general principles in yoga, but probably more about specifics, really. Specific things that I've changed is probably more to the point than generals, because I always believed that yoga would work for people. It worked for me. I always believed that something consistent in a daily practice is important for deepening a sense of oneself, like doing something consistently, right? This is a very general perspective of yoga. I never believed that the be-all end-all was Ashtanga, for example. I didn't believe that was the way, I think that, so it wasn't about a posture, it wasn't about sequence, it wasn't about style or the jumping or the lineage of Pattabhi Jois, Krishnamacharya. It wasn't about anything like that. It was like doing something for oneself consistently and facing oneself, because you're on your own, often on the mat, repetitively, coming back to being with yourself. It feels meaningful. It feels meaningful. It felt meaningful back then, and it still does now. And it works for me, basically. And ever since then, I've been trying to figure out why it works for me so well, why it kind of saved me, kind of mentally and emotionally, right? So, I thought to myself at that time, I'm going to dedicate myself to practicing and teaching this practice. And, practicing certainly because it worked, but teaching it because, I just thought this is way too valuable not to. I just almost felt like it was how would you say, a necessity, giving back to what had helped me so much. If one person out there I could teach and I could help in the way with yoga, the way that it helped me, it's just kind of like save me from mental health challenges, which are so bad. I thought that was worth it. It's a worthwhile aim and usage of my life. Anyway, so yes, general principles. Probably let's start with general principles, not specifics. I know I said specifics, but general principles have changed as well. So let's go generals. So general things I've changed on a more pragmatic level. Deepening a posture. I don't think that there's a deepening of a posture in terms of a linear advancement anymore. Doesn't make sense, right? If you push and push and push further and further and further into posture, all you do is you'll pull your joints out of the sockets, right? In the end, right? With any posture, right? So that doesn't make sense. A deepening of posture doesn't make sense in terms of deepening a shape, right? Because where does that end? So in a way, that is irrational in the first place. So we have to look at it from a different perspective. When we change our minds, look from a different perspective. What that means is balancing forces in the body. Yeah. So a deepening of posture is balancing forces in the body, not just pushing in one direction only into a further degree of shape. We're talking about quality of shape, not quantity of shape. So the quality of shape is simply pulling together. Yeah, the stretch is pulling together. Right. So then you mobilize muscles. Then you find a balance in the body. Then it's something to do with yoga because you reach this equanimity of mind state rather than kind of pushing against yourselves into a better future. In other words, not being satisfied with where you are. Instead of that, coming back to yourself, balancing muscle groups, being with yourself as you are, yeah? And that sense of settling when there's a push and a pull and there's no force at all because you've got an isometric stretch, a stretch in balance. Yeah? So that's the deepening of the shape, right? And it's a never-ending process. And this, for me, is found most of all on basic postures, right? It's not deepening one's practice by advancing through the linear series, although often, this isn't encouraged, and I probably encouraged it, and I certainly felt it, that when you could do advanced series, then you'd have an advanced practice. No, it doesn't work like that. Instead, it's actually when you're kind of really involved in balancing forces and trikonasana or, downward dog or something that, it happens. And you'll get it in the end if you keep at it. And then it's really, the linear march forward doesn't make any sense anymore. So there's deepening postures. It really is a deepening experience of a sense of self in the posture between two opposing forces and a pull in together. The stretch is an inward stretch after all, right? Something to do with pressurizing the body is hatha yoga, right? Hatha, forceful. Yoga, obviously we know that one, hatha yoga. A method, a yoga, right, to pressurize, as a forceful pressure on the body, on the spine, and pressurizing the nerves of the spine to align or purify the energy of the spine. So it's a yoga in as much as, let's say, broad strokes. Yoga is about concentration, focus, coming back to a purity of consciousness, one-pointed consciousness, yeah? But then within that, the Hatha Yoga method doesn't do it through the mind. It does it literally through the body, yeah? And we'll talk about that in the next one I do podcast. So we won't go further there now, but you have to have a kind of like basic kind of context of the aims, put the whole aims into context to know, where you're going with this. But I certainly didn't have that's another general point, I suppose. I didn't have that perspective, first of all, when I started yoga. I think I thought that the moving and the breathing were two separate things. And if you did moving and breathing together, then you were concentrating the mind and coming into an embodied sense of yourself and experience. And it was something to do with kind of catharsis, really, just thrashing it out on the mat. You would purify those emotions, because by the end of it, I was calm because I was so het up a lot of the time, and I put that into the practice and practiced in a rather, let's say, dynamic, in a more positive sense of the word, but rather crazy kind of way. And there was a catharsis, and a sense of concentration or distraction from my own self, from my problems, from my emotional states. Yeah. So I didn't have that understanding of Hatha Yoga in the first place. It was balancing energy, and it was to do with the spine. And it was to do with certain principles of working with the spine. That's come much later. Yeah. So there's stages as well. Obviously, I had to go through that stage of just basically settling my mind state and being okay enough to be with myself to have the kind of clarity to look deeper into what I was doing. Because that just wasn't possible in the early days. I just did not have that sense of peace of mind to look any further than trying to relax or trying to settle my peace of mind. Anyway, so deepening a posture, I changed that perspective, I think, fully from accomplishing a posture to balancing energies within a posture. But, anyway, I think you probably get that point by now. Adjustments. Second thing, adjustments don't work. Adjustments are really one of the bane of my life. It doesn't mean I don't physically assist. Of course, I do give physical assistance. I think it's hugely beneficial for us to be in trusting touch with each other. Changes everything. My best adjustment, I might have mentioned before, with John Scott, he just put his hands on me, did nothing at all. And, being with people in proximity, if you trust them, if you feel their touch is endorsing, affirmative of your being, just opens up the body like nothing else. Yeah. But pushing people into a posture isn't exactly affirmative of their current experiences, is it? In fact, it sends a message that they're not good enough, right? And then what the body does is it just pushes back against you anyway, right? Because the body always wants to seek homeostasis, right? It wants to, in everything, in its blood temperature, in the regulation of its all its organs, it just wants to seek homeostasis naturally. So the body tension wants to do the same thing. Musculoskeletally, we want to seek that homeostasis as well. So we when we push against ourselves and our current tension, the body tries to retain its patterns, and pushes back against us. And then we're in this never-ending war with ourselves and with other people that are like our teachers who push against us, And the yielding that might happen in the end, people say it's an opening, but usually it's not. Usually the point of greatest flexibility, i.e. the weakest point in the body already, gives way to hurting, overstretching a tendon, joint complex, ligaments, and that's not a positive thing, and it's not really an opening, and it's nothing to do with balancing stretches in the body, it's to do with muscles. Yeah. So, I mean, in the very first sense, it doesn't make sense, because if we're stretching muscles towards each other and finding right tension in a balance between forces in the body, not stretching out of the body, but stretching into the body, that's why I had to put that last point before, I think. If we're doing that, then to be adjusted in one direction only out of the body, like pushed further outwards away from ourselves, doesn't make sense. Yeah? Because you can't do that muscularly. You just have to yield from the ligaments, the tendons, the muscle fascia. And that actually is tension, right? The joint is moved by muscles in opposition, right? The agonist and the antagonist. One muscle controls the movement in extension. The other muscle relaxes and controls it in flexion slightly. Well, it's still toned, yeah? Anyway, so the muscles move the joints, not the tendon. You can move the joint from the tendon and ligament, but that's just to destabilize the joint that wants to actually be firm. It wants to be stable, yep? So I've never really found a person that's benefited from an adjustment, and I'm sure some people listening to this will say, no, I have, I'm sure I have, but I don't know. I can't speak for your experience, of course, and I know it's thrilling to be adjusted sometimes. It feels good to be pushed further than we can go, but in the long term, my own perspective, my own experience is that it causes more trouble than it's worth, even if now and again we have a real opening, yeah? I mean, the first few days, literally, I mean, not the first few days, but the first couple of months or few months, there's some argument for a passive stretch, like just a little bit, very, very gently being eased or pushed ever so gently further, right? Just to stretch the joint capsule out, stretch the muscle fascia out, stretch the ligaments and joints, indeed. Yeah, because we're literally tight. But very quickly, that tightness goes as far that's eased, that muscle, that kind of ligament joint tension is eased, and then doesn't go any further. At that point, you're going to have to stretch muscles, and only you can do that. You can't get someone else to stretch that out for you. Yeah. So being pushed in one direction only doesn't work. And anyway, it's not a yoga stretch, which is two directional. Yeah. Opposing forces into the body rather than being stretched out of the body. Yeah. So adjustments. Not to say I don't give physical assistance. Of course I do, but I don't adjust, which is also, as I said, to send the message that the current person isn't good enough where they are, which of course is the whole point of yoga, to accept ourselves wherever we are. Technique. This is another thing I think I've really done 180 degrees with in a way over the last few years. But I learned the yoga technique, and it wasn't until much later from Mark Darby I learned yoga technique in my 30s. I'd already been practicing for over 10 years and doing advanced series, but I knew nothing about yoga, right? I mean, honestly, I was just thrashing it out, just pushing myself and into these postures. Happened to be that I was flexible, so I could do the postures from flexibility, but I knew nothing about balancing forces in the body. It wasn't yoga, really. It was just doing shapes. Anyway, so latterly I met Mark Darby, my Western teacher, because, in India, you go to Mysore, practice in Mysore, you learn, I mean, if you're practicing in Mysore with Pattabhi Jois or Sharat Jois, there's too many people to really learn technique, right? So if it would ever be taught in the first place, which is probably not. So, Western teacher is good for that. So I was learning from Mark Darby as well as going to Mysore, and that's where I learnt yoga technique, and I'll be forever grateful to him. And it was so revelationary that what happened was that I started just going overboard teaching technique to my students for years and not really understanding that there was a lot more going on as a teacher than just simply teaching them how to do things right. Well, first of all, because there's no right way. Second of all, because really what people ultimately need is just to be inspired, to have space around them, right? Because most of the time we have to think all the time. Yeah. We have to be a certain way all the time. When we get into a yoga class, we want that space. We want to be held, we want to be supported, encouraged. Yep. But probably we don't want to be told, this is how you should do a posture, try to do this, put your foot there, do that all the time. Yeah. And I started to do that a bit just because I was so amazed with the technique that I had learned and how it affected my own practice. Yeah. So another thing I would say, broad strokes, is that technique has become not non-essential. I still teach it, but it's taken a bit more of a backseat than perhaps it did originally. And the foreground is always support, encouragement, safe encouragement. And like just being there and holding a safe space for people that they feel that they can let go in a bit, that they don't feel that they have to be a certain way in either. Yeah, because many Mysore spaces, you will know this probably. If you behave in a certain way, if you respect the teacher and let them adjust you, maybe, yeah, blah blah blah. If you do the things in a certain way that they want, then you'll have that support. But what I want, yeah, because perhaps I never felt it, was unconditional support. Yeah, that the teacher is there for you, the space is there for you, in my space anyway, whether you follow me or not right now, whether you agree with everything I say or not, yeah, is there for you, and I'm in support of you, whatever, just to find your own feet, yourself, right, which is partly kicking against my ideas, yeah, because that's what happens, right? We have to be allowed to feel ourselves, to be ourselves, yeah. It's not about a battle of egos. Again, that whole teacher-student thing, yeah. Yeah, of course I'm the authority somewhat in this space, but yeah, we're all in it together in a sense, yeah. Anyway, technique, yoga technique. Next thing is breathing. The breathing I didn't realize. As I told you before, I really thought it was me moving and breathing and trying to sync the breath with the movement. No, the breath is the movement. The diaphragm is the thing. The diaphragm is in the center of the body. It acts as a trampoline. All the scapular muscles are attached to the diaphragm. When you move the diaphragm, it moves the body if you do it properly. We breathe anyway with the diaphragm, right? But we also breathe with the pecs, the intercostal muscles, the sternocleidomastoid muscles, a bit of a tongue twister. And, in yoga, we're trying to flip that. Yeah, we're just trying to breathe with the diaphragm, right? Thoracic breathing, upper body breathing using the diaphragm, right? Belly breathing would do normally. Anyway, that's time for another podcast. But we're trying to thoracically breathe, upper chest, using the diaphragm, only the diaphragm, right? And when we use the flexion and the extension of the diaphragm, it's moving up and down like that inverted trampoline in the center of our body. Yeah. Inverted trampoline, up and down, yeah, flexion, extension. When we use that, it pulls on the muscles of the upper back, right? And they're your core. It's not your belly that's your core. Those muscles at the upper back of the core, and when they're mobilized using the breath, you have this sense of lightness and a sense of mobility and strength through the body, yep, because you're able to do it from the breath, yep. With the bandha, the breath, the diaphragm relates to the lower abdominal engagement, right? So you can mobilize it most fully, so you can draw it down most fully. Yeah. So the two things really function together. The bandha makes the breath, but the diaphragm is the thing in the end. So it's not bandha for the sake of bandha or lower abdominal engagement for the sake of that. That is the cause and the effects that we're looking for. The aim that we're looking for is diaphragmatic control. Yeah. That's the plan. And with that diaphragmatic control, you can then really, really increase your level of how you do the postures. So you're not doing them muscularly anymore. You're doing them from the use of the diaphragm and how it relates to the muscles. Yep. So the breathing makes the posture, literally. Yep. It's not breathing and moving. Not breath, bandha, drishti. Yep. The whole experience in the first place is one. You're trying to get one experience. So the breath, yeah, it's actually posture, yeah, the right, holding the body in the right way, the breathing, which is diaphragm, and the drishti, which is the engagement of the neck position to hold the posture. All those techniques provide one experience, yeah, which is this certain kind of drawing up of the energy through the spine, literally, yeah, through the use of the diaphragm and the bandha, and metaphorically, yep. You're kind of trying to rein the energy in that you would be pushing outwards. You're trying to pull the energy towards you and magnify it. Yep. Pressurizing those nerves of the spine, as I said previously. That we'll talk about in our next podcast, what the Hatha Yoga deeper technique is tantrically. Anyway, so the breathing has changed to be my primary, both. primary focus, right? Whereas it was a subsidiary focus to the postures and to doing the sequences right before. The breathing is the thing. The sequences, the postures are a tool, a way, yeah, an instance, an example of how to practice the breathing. But the breathing is the thing. Once you get the diaphragm, you don't even need to stick to those sequences anymore. But the diaphragm is very hard to grasp, to hold in the subtle manner that we need to, yeah. Along those lines, my final thing, maybe the series. I don't teach those series rigidly like I used to, right? You have to do them exactly. You have to do one posture to move on to the next posture, right? I used to be like that, I mean, for a while, obviously at the start, I wasn't like that, but then certain point of going to Mysore all the time, you get like that. Yeah, usually, often, most people. And so I got like that. And now I'm not like that. If someone can't do the posture, it's quite possibly for genetic reasons, right? Or it might just simply be through age, right? Our bodies get a lot stiffer as we get older, if you hadn't noticed, right? Or simply the body won't move like that. They were never set up like that. Like the scapular position is such. I mean, the variation in our bodies is so great that your scapular position, if you look at the bones of different people's scapulars, right, the shape of them is so different, right? The shoulder blades, this is what we're talking about. Or the hip. Look at the angle of the hip. Yep. Look at where it's placed. So different between people. So certain people will never do lotus comfortably, will never do a jump back or jump through comfortably, never bind because of the position of the scapula, never binds things. Yeah. So it makes no sense to just roll out this kind of generic homogenized practice, right? Has to be individual based. Series work well. I still teach the series. They keep everyone kind of doing something together. I think that's beneficial. They give you a pattern. Then we can still belong to Ashtanga yoga. You don't have to do my yoga. Don't really want to make up a series myself. They work okay. Yeah, perfect. But not everyone should be doing all postures. Yeah, or we'll keep the series, but what I do is I put placeholders there. You can't do this. They do this as a placeholder. Do this as a version or as a variation on that. But you don't have to stay there until you can get it, because some people will then always stay there until they can get it, because they'll never move on. And then they're only doing very limited movement patterns. We've got 2 series. Let's do our own versions of those 2 series. And you've got way more movement patterns to play around with. That's my perspective anyway. Not straight away. I wouldn't rush people through it. But, that's what we're building to over a course of, short while, couple of years or something. Yeah. 2 series. And then your version of those 2 series. Yeah. You've got many more movement patterns. You've got the back bends of the second series to help you. It only makes sense, in my view. And that's how they were taught originally in Mysore anyway. Yeah? Do the 2 series and then gradually fill in the details, right? Get the outline, sketch the outline, yeah, and then gradually work on the details rather than keep on working on the detail all the time and never go looking at the whole context, yeah? Anyway. Specifics. What have I changed specifically? Let's get back to brass tacks now. What are the specific things I've changed? Well, one thing in the back bend, for example, is I used to be very keen on feet straight, the inside of the foot staying straight in the back bend. Now I don't think so. I think you turn the feet out. It allows you to utilize hip rotation. And then you've got the sacrum. It's got a lot less pressure on it, right? Because you're allowing the hips to roll out. You're not using the sacrum and the lower back so much. So it feels like a lot more space for people there. Often very beneficial. The most advanced thing will be straight feet, but often the instruction Ashtanga is the most advanced one, right? Keep the feet straight or this or that, and it's not appropriate for most people to turn the feet out in a normal back bend. And they also encourage people to turn them out in drop backs too. Nothing wrong with that. People used to say, oh, it's contracting or compressing your sacrum. I'd say the opposite, in fact, yeah. There's for some people it might, right? And the main thing I've changed, I suppose, is seeing that there's not one way to do things, that we're all so different. Yeah. So external rotation, most generally, I agree with in the back bends, but in terms of regular postures, no, the opposite. In fact, internal rotation, right? Instead of externally rotating for things like Baddha Konasana, Upavishta Konasana, even things like a twisted triangle, Parivrtta Trikonasana, actually internal rotation. I mean, we're externally rotating anyway because we've taken the leg outwards from the joint. So there is external rotation there. But when you're in the posture, try and focus on the feeling of more internal rotation. Yeah, because the internal rotation is the thing that will release your sacrum, right? So when you're rolling the legs in, you're creating a stress, a mild stress, a good stress across the back of the sacrum. And that is what you're looking for as a hip opener. The hip opener is not that much to do with opening the legs literally, exactly. That's just your inner groins. Yeah, that's just your inner groins. That's an easy opening to get. The real hip opener is around the back of the hips to do with the sacrum. So more internal rotation, less external rotation. Another thing that I've changed. Rounding, forward folds, the round back. I always do that now. I used to do a flat back, pulling the chest towards the legs. But if we're opposing forces, i.e. we're pulling back from the legs, remember it's Paschimottanasana, westward face back stretch. You're stretching back to the west, having practiced yoga to the east, Paschimottanasana. Then you're stretching back and your back will naturally be a little bit rounded. Not literally trying to really round the back, but not straight, not completely straight. If it's completely straight, you'll also be likely tilting your pelvis slightly forward, in a posterior tilt of the pelvis, which will also destabilize your lower back and overstretch your lower back a bit as well. That won't be helpful. And it won't stretch the upper back, which is what we're always really trying to do. Mobilize those muscles of the upper back, right? So rounding the back, Nothing wrong with rounding. We need the spine, the back moves always. It moves into extension, it moves into flexion. We need all things. The back is naturally curved. We don't need to constantly keep trying to literally straighten the spine, right? Length through the spine, can be done in a curve as much as it can be done in an extension. But we prioritize these extension movements because they seem like an opening chest to give us more space. They seem like it, but not everything that seems like it actually does that, right? So, rounding is not to be afraid of, right? The spine has a natural curves in it. Use them, not always rounding, but use flexion as much as use extension. What we're doing is lengthening the spine. We're lengthening the spine, and that's not the same as extending the spine. So a straight spine, which is using extension generally, is not the same as lengthening, which can be done in flexion or extension. Does that make sense? It's a tricky point, to do with drawing the tailbone down slightly and lifting the breastbone, whilst keeping the front ribs in. Anyway, think about that, and maybe I'll explain it later. Not this time, in a later podcast. Other things, small things, catching the wrist. Oh, yeah, I don't like that. It pulls the shoulders forward. If it's a forward fold, gives you no space. And you're trying to pull the shoulders back in the first place. So catch the hands on the feet, either side of the foot. You've got space around the neck, space around the shoulders, right? And it only makes sense to me. So I don't do that either. And also that catching the wrist tends to pull you forward when you're trying to pull back. Can be done, catching the wrist, the action that you need, but harder to do. So I generally teach catching the foot now. Twisting. I used to think that the idea was twisting further around, right? So if you're a Marichyasana C, keep on twisting further and further and further around. No, actually twisting is torsion. So when you're turning, looking to the back, say in a twist, or looking over your shoulder in a twist, actually the hips are always resisting that movement. So the twist happens in two opposite directions, one at the top and one at the bottom, twisting in opposite directions. So it's not about twisting the whole body, but about the twist actually means resisting the twist at the hips. So you're twisting from the upper body, that's where you twist best, naturally. And the lower body is getting the stretch across the sacrum, again, is a hip opener. The twists are actually hip openers by resisting the twist at the top of the body. So twist, I changed my mind on through understanding them more effectively for purpose. Back bends. I always teach the second series back bends now to people, i.e. Shalabhasana, Dhanurasana, Ustrasana, a few times maybe even. I miss out if they're not done primary series, right? Because I teach them to people who haven't done half a primary, right? Those early back bends, they're good ones, If they've done the full primary, then they'll go into second intermediate series and do it from the start. If they haven't, then they'll just do those ones in isolation. And then if they feel like it, they can do a bit of a full back bend, Urdhva Dhanurasana. But it makes no sense just to do Urdhva Dhanurasana cold without having done those preparatory back bends in the first place. And as you know by now, the primary series and the intermediate series were one series originally, and the back bends came at the end of that second series, right? And they weren't exactly one series, but they were kind of practiced in a one series linear progression, and the back bends came at the end of that. Anyway, what else? General practice advice. I might mention a few things. As I said, intro to second, I always add on now, really early on, get them to second. I suppose I've mentioned already that I don't insist on people completing things like in the perfect idealized way, because understanding that the longer you go on, basically, the longer you go on teaching, you realize the anatomical variation is so great that you can't give general prescriptions. And I suppose what I was going to say as a finale here is that just the idea that you don't have to practice. You don't have to practice amount. It's not the amount. Sorry, it's not the amount that matters. It's the quality of what you do. So you should be able to streamline your practice in the end to 45 minutes even. It doesn't have to be huge long. In fact, that's just depleting, practicing for hours at a time in the end. That's only depleting. What you're looking for is to streamline your practice and get quality over quantity. Less time, more effect. It's not the amount you do. I could say loads of other things and the ways have changed, right? And I suppose that part of the journey is just not being so attached to it. Because first of all, we haven't got a routine yet, kind of no discipline, unless, well, maybe I speak just for myself, but we haven't got so much discipline, discipline for work and stuff that we have to do, but not personal discipline. And then you do this, you do the yoga practice, you get into it, and you start to get personal discipline. And then you become over-disciplined, right? And you feel terrible if you miss one. And then in the end, you can relax that personal discipline, knowing deeply that you have it. you have it anyway. And when you need to relax it, that you're not just going to fall off the bandwagon, as it were, that or back to having no personal discipline, that you trust yourself. Yeah? That deepening of personal trust with the practice, that it's not the practice itself, the practice is just a symbol for something deeper, i.e. yourself. Anyway, I've done too long today. 45 minutes is more than enough for you to listen to me ramble on about ideas. If you liked it, then please comment, take the time to comment. And if you have appreciated it, then, just review us and subscribe to the channel on iTunes or whatever browser you use. It helps the show, I think. Next week we're back with a special guest. We've got some great guests coming up for the next few weeks, so please stay subscribed for those. And I hope to see you soon somewhere, right? There's a few more things coming up on the agenda. Currently in Cyprus, we are taking a couple of weeks off. Then I'll be teaching at Insolento in Puglia, and then I'll be teaching at Purple Valley Yoga Goa in India. Yeah. November. I'd love to see you there. And the Malaga retreat over Christmas. Over that period of time, have a look. If you've got time, then you want to have a different kind of Christmas. It's me and Ellen Johansson who's teaching the Tibetan Buddhism. I'm teaching the yoga, and it's going to be really special. And then after that, I'm heading to Australia, always online, as I said. And if you fancy doing the online intensive, I'd absolutely love to answer any questions you have about that. If you fancy joining, perhaps. Okay, that's enough for me. I hope you have a great week until I speak to you again. And I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.